You are listening to the story on channel. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Supremacy Games. Chapter 1, Ruins Exploration Gone Wrong. My ass is on fire. My butthole is burning. F***CK, make it stop please. With an unsightly face filled with tears and snort, Felix clutched his ass cheeks tightly while rolling on the floor, leaving behind him a trail of blood that was coming out of his anus. His shrieks kept echoing non-stop inside a colossal hall that was floored using tiles embodied with colorful gems, walls dyed with amber color gleaming under the artificial light of milky white gems, which were holstered on the ceiling. Their bright light illuminated not just the walls but everything that was inside the hall with vivid details. Starting with the soldiers' statues that were standing uprightly at the corners of the hall, each holding a different type of weapon with one arm, while the other arm had a purplish chain rolled up their forearms, like they were trying to clasp it with their own dear life. Those four purplish chains were connected to a small platform that was in the very center of the hall. They shackled it so tight that it was affixed mid-air without any support. At the surface of the platform, a fist-sized flame that had no color just like water was floating and flickering gently above it, while underneath it, two corpses were lying unmoving. Well, it was actually just one corpse, as the other was merely a blackened skeleton. Slam! Felix's unrestrained rolling was finally stopped as he collided with the corpse. If his eyes weren't hazy from crying his heart out, he would have seen that he just slammed into Kathy. His clanmate joined the ruins exploration party just like him, seeking natural treasures and resources to enhance her bloodline path further. Alas, here she was lying cold with one of her eyeballs dug out from its roots. PILHLDBDLDFLLFLBHIHFHLF. Previously, her eye was assaulted by a needle made of colorless flame sent by that entity on the top of the platform. She dug her own eye out, trying her best to remove that needle and stop the hellish agony it was causing her. Sadly, her present form was enough to entail that her attempt failed miserably. Well, look at the bright side. At least she was not dealt with the same fate as Felix, who was still shrieking like a little girl who just had her lollipop stolen. Although his pained screams were a bit too B***tchy, Felix could totally be excused since his butthole had just got penetrated by the same flame needle. Finally unable to take any more, he let one last scream and fainted with eyes rolled at the back of his head. To understand why he was even in this F***ed-up situation, one must first understand the events that led to this point in time. 7 days earlier, Felix's clan exploration crew picked up signals of a massive amount of energy coming from a destroyed planet nearby. They were on their way to the clan after successfully finishing their mission. But, after they noticed those signals, there was nowhere in hell they would have ignored them and move on. Hence, they changed their course and went directly towards that said planet. After landing, they immediately noticed that the signals were coming from underneath a destroyed magnificent city that had half of its structures buried deep underground. Just like any exploration team, their senses tingled that it was their lucky day. After all, they just found a deserted city that probably belonged to one of the universe's superior races. The city's magnificence, even while destroyed, made them reach such a conclusion. Instead of reporting what they found to their clan like they were taught to, greed took the best of them and made them vote to explore the ruins by themselves. However, the city was humongous, and it would take them years to explore half of it. Thus, the captain proposed to split up into teams made of 3 each. Felix, Kathy, and Jaden, who sadly turned into a burned skeleton, formed one team and went to explore the western side of the city. Obviously, during the first day, Felix's party didn't come across anything worthy of their attention. Nonetheless, they didn't give up, as they kept on searching for a path that led to the underground, hoping to be the first to reach the place where the signal was emitting from. Yet, they still came out empty on the second day as well. Then came the third day, and still the same disappointing result. On the fourth day, nothing changed. On the fifth day, exhaustion started to wear them out. On the sixth day, when they were losing hope, Jaden spotted a 2-meter hole hidden underneath the bricks of a destroyed building while he was taking a piss. However, instead of telling his teammates, he decided to explore the tunnel solo. First come, first serve, right? Unfortunately, what he found deep underground weren't long-lost legacies, inheritance, treasures, or such as they expected. But a long, very long semi-dark path led to an unknown destination. Without further ado, he climbed up and went to inform Felix and Kathy. The gloomy semi-dark path scared the shit out of him. He didn't have the guts to tread it alone. After hearing the news, Felix decided not to report the situation to the rest but keep it to themselves. Who could blame him, though? The exploration crew had at least 54 bloodliner, aiming to be the first to find the treasures. Felix, who was part of the weakest bunch in the crew, wasn't a retard to give up such an advantage for a pat in the head. Jaden thought exactly like him. As for Kathy, she wasn't too eager to go with just the three of them alone. However, few enticing words from Felix did the trick, making her drop her worry down and explore the path with them. They walked, and continued to walk for a straight 12 hours before they finally spotted a sparkle of golden light at the end of the path. If their bodies weren't enhanced from their bloodline integration, they would have honestly dropped dead tired. In the middle of the trail, they ran towards it with eager expressions. However, the moment they reached the end of the path and saw what was giving off that golden light, they couldn't help but stare wide-eyed, not daring to believe their eyes. A gigantic broken gate made completely out of heron amber stones. One of the rarest luxurious material in the known universe could only be extracted from the outer core of a planet if the harsh conditions of its creation were met. Yet this precious stone that could only be chanced upon by luck was being used for a humongous gate that reached 50 meters in height. Not to mention its width and depth. They honestly were beyond speechless and on the verge of questioning their own reasoning. Still, this gate just made their previous conclusion that the city belonged to an ancient superior race more solid. They knew that those races were a league apart from the human race. Whether in strength, culture, wealth, and even technological advancement. There was just no fair comparison between the two. This news didn't make them feel indignant but actually excited. Excited that whatever was behind that gate was definitely what they came for. They rushed in the direction of a slight opening at the bottom of the broken gate, resembling a rat hole in a wall. Felix lay down and crawled on his stomach, eating dirt and dust, yet his eyes never stopped shimmering with delight for even a second. After he passed through, Kathy and Jaden followed one by one. Immediately after dusting their outfits, they raised their heads and stared in shock at the hall that had the small platform. Shackled midair by those 4 purplish chains and the soldiers' statues who were clasping those chains tightly. Yet, what truly shocked them was actually the colorless flame that appeared more like a sphere of water. If it wasn't flickering from time to time, they would have honestly assumed so. Still, they never saw or heard about such an uncanny flame in their entire life. They knew that they just hit the jackpot. There was no way such a strange-looking flame wasn't a natural treasure. In their eyes, the flame must be a natural treasure for fire elemental users. Although neither of them had a fire element, they still could sell it for a shitload of supremacy coins in the universal virtual reality, UVR. They traded glances between each other, not knowing how to carry on. There was only one flame, but 3 of them. It was clear that trusting each other on holding the flame in their spatial card was not an option. They might be clan mates, but it didn't mean they were close tight friends. Abruptly, Felix bolted towards the platform, uncaring about his teammates' ugly expression. He didn't give them a single second to think things through before forcing them to race after him, trying their best to catch up. Yet, he sneakily slowed down his speed, allowing those 2 to surpass him quickly. They didn't see anything odd about his lackluster pace, as they knew that he was probably still tired from their long walk in the path. Felix kept slowing down his speed until he stopped all at once and retreated next to the hole which they came from. If those 2 didn't have their entire focus captured by the colorless flame, they would have noticed that he bailed out. Oh, fresh souls to possess? Not bad. Suddenly, Felix, Kathy, and Jaden all froze in shock after hearing an angelic voice in their minds, sweet and enticing that might let even the devil himself drop his guard down. Kathy and Jaden, who were the nearest to the flame spirit, immediately turned around, planning to sprint towards Felix. They didn't know who spoke, and they weren't about to stay still in their position to find out. Their gut feeling told them to back off as far as possible. Unfortunately, the moment they entered the flame spirit territory and woke her up, their lives were pretty much doomed. Phew. 2 colorless flame needles were thrown with the speed of light at their heads. One penetrated Jaden's ear, and the other penetrated Kathy's eye. Aha! Kaya! Before Felix's brain could even comprehend what had just happened, he heard 2 agonizing screams, far surpassing whatever he had heard in his entire life. His eyes landed on his 2 clanmates, who were currently thrashing around like fish caught in a net. His legs stiffened, not letting him take a single step back. He just kept watching, scared shitless. Kathy uses 2 fingers to dig deep within her eyeball, trying to get out that needle. Alas, she dug nothing but her eyeball out with her pale hand covered in blood. Yet she didn't seem to mind, as she only kept screaming and begging for the pain to be over. Sadly, neither her wish was fulfilled, nor anyone came to her rescue. She only left 2 last whimpers before going silent once and for all. TSK, she couldn't even handle the first stage of possession. Confused as ever from how things escalated so fast, Felix switched his vision from Kathy's corpse into unexpectedly Jaden, who just spoke. Dumbfounded, his eyes made direct contact with Jaden and instantly knew that it was definitely someone else. However, just as Jaden opened up his mouth, trying to speak again, his body started to burn, turning his hands and legs first into ash, followed by his torso and head. The only thing left from him were his blackened bones. *T. Another failure. I had enough of this shitty place. It's been already 20 million years of imprisonment. If *King had enough. The flame spirit cursed in Felix's mind, waking him up from his stupor. Boy, you better not disappoint me as well, she said coldly. Without a second delay, Felix turned around and lay on the floor, trying to crawl back inside the hole and leave this damned place. The thought of fighting didn't even cross his mind as he saw the speed those needles traveled with. He knew that all of his bloodline abilities didn't have a single way to defend against them. Not to mention, if he entered through the hole, his head would be completely protected from those needles that were obviously targeting his weak vitals to reach his brain and enter his consciousness. Do you think the ones before you didn't use the same strategy as yours? She laughed like a deranged person and said, I may not succeed in syncing our souls together, but at least I will add another butthole virginity to my collection. Thank you for that, she said sincerely. Scared out of his wits by what he just heard, Felix reflexively tried to turn around and protect his ass. Yet, the hole was too tight to let him make such a large movement. Hold on a second. Let's talk things through, he requested a cracking voice, hoping to buy a couple of seconds to pass through the other side. Unfortunately, the moment his torso was inside the hole, leaving his lower body outside in the open, he heard the spirit flame say in satisfaction, perfection. As all things should be. No. He screamed subconsciously, as he felt that his ass was being targeted by a rapist. Phew. The needle flew straight to his anus, resembling a dart hitting the bullseye. The flame spirit must have practiced thousands of times to have such precise accuracy. My ass is melting. I am sorry for ruining your sleep. Please let me go. Henceforth, a symphony of shrieks and beggings resounded in the hall and the semi-dark path. Felix kept trying to move, wanting to ease up the pain by a little bit, yet the hole he was in made it almost impossible. Thus, he crawled back with his face planted on the dirt and hands clasped tightly on his ass cheeks. After getting his entire body outside, he immediately started rolling from the hole to where Kathy's corpse was, leaving behind a long trail of blood. The distance between the two wasn't a joke. He really rolled himself out cold. Inside Felix's sea of consciousness, a colorless flame slowly started to take the shape of a woman with shoulder-length wavy crimson hair that shone with crystal luster, citrine yellowish eyes that radiate beams of light and heat just like stars. Above them, implausibly artistic black eyebrows, while beneath them, an elegantly straight nose, and broad and sensual bright rouge lips. All of those ravishing characteristics were contained within a flawless, elegant pale face that's on an hourglass curvy body, with a perfect-sized chest and rear. Anyone who saw this otherworldly beauty would agree that only the universe's beauty could be compared to her. No matter THID, their race or gender. Unfortunately, this stunning image was ruined instantly when she started to touch all of her assets while laughing hysterically. Finally, after 20 million years of imprisonment, and millions of souls that I failed to sync with, finally, I found the perfect soul that matches mine without backlash. Asna, origin of law, finally going to be free. Suddenly she calmed down her joy and thought, no matter what, I have to take control of this soul, even if I sacrifice part of my laws. I cannot let this chance slip by. Her form soon started to disintegrate into a mist that spread to cover the entire sea of consciousness. However, just as she tried to ignite the mist so it would burn this consciousness and replace it, a shout filled with anger and humiliation resonated sonorously around the place. Over my dead body, you old hag. The sea of consciousness that was just calm seconds ago began to rise with waves hitting the walls, surrendering it. Roars of the sea covered the entire area as the waves kept smashing the soul barrier, trying to demolish it. Asna quickly figured what Felix was doing and yelled with a horrified voice, "Stop it, you idiot! Are you trying to kill yourself for eternity?" She quickly started to coax him logically, "Please stop, even if I destroyed your sea of consciousness, you could still be revived later, or at least be reborn in another form. And even if you detonated your soul, I would not die with you." Felix, who just woke up for the most traumatizing experience in his life, was having none of her bullshit anymore. "I would rather be reborn as a void creature in the universe than let you have what you want. This is for my butthole virginity," he shouted one last time as his soul barrier began to collapse on the sea of consciousness. Crash, crash! You lunatic! Asna screamed in despair. Then suddenly, her expression turned crazed as well. "I can't let this chance go by. I will start the merging process with his soul, and if it got destroyed, my existence would be erased with it as well, since our souls will be connected. Even though it's not the freedom that I seek, but I would rather be erased than spent another second in this prison." A few moments later, she finished the process of merging successfully. She sighed in relief and waited for the explosion to happen with a peaceful, mild smile. Within the hall, an explosion that had the same power as of Earthling's old-age nuclear bomb went off abruptly, destroying, well, just Jaden's bones and Kathy's corpse. The rest remained absolutely unscratched. At the moment of the explosion, near the core of the same galaxy that Felix was currently at, an eye with an astronomical size unsealed itself silently. Its pupil was as dark as a black hole. Not a single light particle was being reflected on it. It glanced at the direction of the explosion and pondered, did something happen to the place I was imprisoned in? He kept looking at the same spot and instantly created a mirror that showcased everything that happened since the spaceship arrived at the ruins. Interesting, so that witch finally found a soul compatible enough to hold her shameless spirit without backlash. He then started to laugh out loud after seeing Felix detonating himself due to humiliation. "Ha ha ha ha, you deserve it, you wench. If those old fogies saw what you did, they will probably denounce you for ruining the image of the Unigine race. But since you seek the freedom that much, to the point of trying even to erase your existence, I will break the rules of our race and give you a hand." He then gazed at the explosion, and time was suddenly stopped in that place. Everything was suspended in the same position. The eye looked deep within the explosion and saw a wisp of a soul in the process of being extinguished. Then, it sent two fingers that traveled through space-time and grabbed it swiftly towards its place. 2 minutes later, the eye kept scanning the soul wisp with intrigue. He realized that both of their souls had merged to form one. But Felix's soul had total control of it. So, if he wanted to give Asna a second chance at life, Felix would benefit from it more than her, since she would only be viewing for his eyes with zero control. That's for her to solve, not me. Amused, he chuckled at the wisp one last time and then threw it at its humongous pupil. The eye being sealed its eye slowly in exhaustion after overusing space-time laws to send them into another timeline. A timeline that was the same as this one. Safe journey, he murmured one last time. Supremacy Games. Chapter 2, Fresh Start. On an island in the middle of the northern Pacific Ocean, a neglected resort hotel was built near a beach. Inside a dimly lighted suite, a young man suddenly woke up with sweat on his forehead while taking deep breaths each time. He clutched his head tightly with his fingers, trying to dig deep within his brain to stop the agony that assaulted him during his Nap. Aru. However, he soon gave up his futile attempts and let out a long shriek, passing out on his bed with rolled eyes. His scream managed to alert the guards who were standing in front of the suite door. One of them rushed inside, heading towards the bedroom while holding a handgun. "Young Master Felix, are you all right?" he yelled. Yet, he received no response, so he kicked the bedroom door open when he reached it. He took a quick peek inside the room with one eye. Sure enough, he saw Felix lying on his bed unmoving above a puddle of sweat covering the bed sheets like someone just urinated on them. If Felix's cousins saw the current situation, they would make sure to shame him to death. The bodyguard dashed forward and touched Felix's neck to check if he was alive. As he confirmed that Felix was not dead and probably just unconscious, he sighed in relief. He knew that the family would definitely get him executed if any harm befallen Felix under his watch. He called for the room service and ordered sternly, "You have 5 minutes to make a tonic that can help someone in regaining conscious, go make haste." 6 minutes later, Felix, whose nose was assaulted by the nasty tonic, regained his consciousness and groggily opened his eyes. "Who am I? Where am I? Who is this man looking at me like I'm his son? Is he my father? But he is ugly. Am I ugly as well?" Before his thoughts jumbled more, a vast amount of memories flooded his brain with great momentum. Unfortunately, his already weak brain after the soul possession couldn't handle the load of them all at once. Thus, he fainted. Again, his head hit the bed sheet with a plop sound and rolled eyes. The bodyguard's soul instantly escaped his body after hearing that sound. He kept repeating in his mind, "I am so dead, so dead, so dead." He realized that Felix was probably poisoned. After all, no one faints for no reason, not once but twice in a row. He looked at the tonic in his hands like it was a divine artifact and placed it under Felix's nose while praying sincerely for Felix to wake up and not faint again. Felix smelled that nasty tonic again and woke up, but this time with clarity in his eyes. Memories of his past life started to rearrange themselves with an order in his mind. He smiled with triumph after viewing them, just as planned. How can someone like me die such uneventful life? My courage of detonating my soul due to humiliation and wounded pride must have moved some entity into giving me a second chance in life. A second voice suddenly interjected itself while he was bragging. "Bastard, your shame truly knows no bounds, to even justify that your rebirth was part of your plan. You really need some serious help." Felix's grin instantly stiffened after recognizing this hateful voice. How could he not recognize the voice of the witch who caused him to undergo the most traumatic experience in his previous life? He soon shook his head in denial. "I must be tripping due to a mental shock I received when those memories flooded my brain." His eyes brightened up after remembering a condition he saw online before. It must be that mental condition PTSD. I definitely got it after all the traumatic things I went through. He just kept convincing himself. Definitely, must, it can only be this. Asna sighed hopelessly. Am I going to be stuck for eternity with this idiot? Felix reflexively cursed her back out loud. You are the idiot, you evil witch, but whole virginity harvester. The bodyguard, who stood silently through the whole process of Felix having a mental breakdown, heard him say this and felt the soul that just returned in his body escape yet again. THLTHHTTHTDTHH high ID, I-Fi IHDTHITTD high BIDTD high IT. The only thought that coursed through his mind was, I am finished. The poison penetrated his brain and turned him into a moron. He could already envision tomorrow's biggest news in media. One of the Maxwell family heirs turned into a retard, and in some hidden corner of the internet, the disappearance of a hard-working man. Tears flooded his cheeks as he saw that image. Felix immediately realized that he was dealing with the real deal after reading her thoughts. Now there was no escaping from her, as she was probably sealed in his consciousness. Asna was pleased with his conclusion. Felix, we have all the time to chat with each other, but now you must fix the situation. Outside. That poor guy is crying for some reason. Felix knew that she was right, so he focused on the bodyguard who was sobbing like his life was over. He got up for his bed and whispered in the bodyguard's ear, Jack, don't mention what happened here to anyone, as I tried some new drugs on the market that affected my mental state. He then walked to his closest and opened a drawer where he put his cash and grabbed $500. He returned to Jack's side and put it in the side pocket of his suit. Go outside and tell them I was watching a horror movie. That's why I screamed. He patted his shoulder and added, before you go, take the bedsheets with you and get rid of them. Jack nodded his head absent-mindedly and did as instructed. Just as he tried to leave the bedroom with the sheets, he heard Felix's voice, and send someone to fix the door that you broke. Don't worry, young master, the door will be changed in 10 minutes. Asna saw that Jack had left. Now that the third wheel is not here, let's carry on our conversation. What's there to talk about, you witch? No matter what you say, I will never submit or cooperate with you. My dear Felix, don't you already see what happened to us? She explained with an unhappy voice. Our souls were merged, forming one. And for some unfair reason, you have control of the main body. Meanwhile, I can only view what is happening from your eyes and not interfere. But I don't want for myself to be like this forever, and I guess you also want me to be gone as fast as possible. Right? Felix stood in silence for a while and said, first of all, you fucking deserve what you got, and secondly, you are wrong. After all, why would I want to do you a favor and free you? We will be forever together, so just relax and enjoy watching me live my life. He chuckled wickedly. Asna did not get mad after hearing his claim, since she already expected this answer based on what she had read from his memories. She replied while yawning, all right, as you wish. Do you want to play the long game? I will make sure to accompany you step by step. So don't worry and enjoy your life. If you could, that is. She murmured under her breath. After Felix heard the last part, his face became troubled with an uneasy expression. But shortly after, he relaxed his facial muscles and thought, bring it, you witch, let's see who is going to last. 15 minutes later, he was standing still in front of the mirror, as it reflected his above-average visage. Short curly electric blonde hair, blueberry eyes with dark eyelashes and thin eyebrows. Meanwhile his nose was standing defiantly with red thin lips underneath it. On the other hand, his body was mere, average in every way, with a height of 177 centimeters and a weight of 60 kilograms or 132 pounds. As he examined his youthful image, he rubbed his chin in wonder. Such a fine noble face. Yet why was I single my entire life? It must be because females feel inferior and undeserving when next to me, and that forces them not to have any feelings about me. That must be the reason. He praised himself shamelessly. Asna rolled her eyes and ignored this narcissistic moron. Author note: Felix was sent into a different timeline. He possessed his own alternative version. In a sense, this was a rebirth. But, instead of rewinding the time of the entire universe, which was honestly illogical, he was sent into one of the infinite exact timelines. Just in the past. Plus, his age before he died was 40 years or so. I hope this clears any future confusion. Supremacy Games. Chapter 3, Family Tradition. After he was done admiring his young image in front of the mirror, Felix began to wear his clothes while thinking of the present era he was in right now. From his current memories, he believed that he was sent back to the modern era. An era where Earthlings were still living in peace and harmony in their little blue planet. But that would soon change after the Supremacy Games invitation that turned the world upside down before Mason appearance shortly again. This was even better for his plans. By relying on the memories of his past life, he could without a doubt ace the games and climb the ranking ladder even higher than before. This would reward him with treasures he couldn't even dream of. His expression soon turned serious and solemn real quick as he said firmly, this time, I will not fool around and waste my time idling away. If he was dedicated and hardworking in his bloodline integration, he wouldn't have been sent by the clan to do such a difficult mission but remain in the headquarters being protected and well taken care of like the prodigies. Sadly, he could only clutch his ass with a pained expression in regret after learning this lesson by having his asshole blasted to flames by Asna. His anguish expression was soon replaced by a determined one that would move anyone who sees it. For me not to feel that kind of agonizing pain ever again, I will work harder than everyone. I will make sure to reach the peak. No one will **CK with me. Again. No one. Crack. He punched the mirror until it shattered, sending small pieces of glass everywhere. Soon enough, he dropped to the ground. While holding his bloodied fist, F***ck me. He wailed in anguish. He already forgot that he was now merely 17 years old with a weak body that couldn't even harm a common Tier 1 beast. Jack and the other bodyguard who were near the door heard Felix's roar and the mirror's shattering sound. Just as the other bodyguard tried to rush to check Felix's well-being, Jack stopped him with his arm. Don't worry. It's not serious. Young Master is probably watching a hot-blooded movie, and it moved him to his current state. While his actual thoughts were, young Master Felix is probably on different types of drugs again. In his mind, he already accepted it as a fact since it was quite believable. After all, there was nothing much to do on this forsaken island besides going to the beach, if it was not for the Starlink internet, that uses satellites instead of cables. Felix probably would have gone nuts already. Inside the bedroom, Felix was picking up the mirror glass pieces from the floor with a bandaged hand. Based on my phone, the current year is the 1st of June 2024. If I recall correctly, the invitation will arrive 15 days later, which is quite an ideal period for me to make plans for later. After a while, he finished cleaning the floor and wore his sports shoes, preparing to head outside. He wanted to scout the hotel and the island's current condition. I am leaving the hotel to take a long walk, no need to follow me, and don't you dare send someone behind my back secretly. Understood? He instructed Jack after exiting his suite. Yes, young master, just enjoy your walk, no one will bother you. Felix smiled while patting his shoulder. Good, keep following my orders like this, and I will promote you to my personal chief of bodyguards when I receive my shares from the family. Jack grinned widely. Your wish is my command, young master. Felix then walked toward the elevator while examining the horrendous condition of the hotel in detail. Was my brain full of shit when I chose this business to revive as part of my coming-of-age test or what? He kept walking for a couple of minutes until he saw the rusty elevator that had a sign glued on the door, closed for maintenance. Figured so, Felix sighed in disappointment. Figured so. Felix sighed in disappointment. He turned to his left and headed towards the stairs. The moment he arrived and saw those stairs leading to an abyss, he frowned his eyebrows. Fixing the elevator once and for all is a priority. I can't use those stairs each day. My knees would snap. He braced himself and descended the staircase while trying to organize his 17-years-old memories. If he recalled correctly, he chose this resort hotel in the middle of nowhere as his adulthood test when he reached 16 years old. That's because he wanted to spend the 5 years of the test idling and sunbathing. He soon berated his young self laziness that costed them dearly later on. After all, while others were trying their best to revive the companies, hotels, and restaurants, which they chose as their mission, on the other hand, he was sunbathing here like a salted fish. This negligence towards his test costed him heavily later on when the Supremacy Games invitation arrived. The other juniors who tried their best even if their project didn't do well were still chosen to be nurtured by the family so they would clutch slots in the upcoming national team battles that were going to be held a year or so from now. Meanwhile, the lazy ones like him who took the family coming-of-age tradition as a joke were punished heavily by the elders. Bored. Since his parents and other close relatives had died one way or another, he had no one to vouch for him anymore within the family. Just as he wanted to keep on his nagging, he remembered his parents. One of the few ones who loved him in that wolf den, where competition to obtain benefits for oneself was but the norm, and every method to do so was allowed, as long as no one gets harmed. His parents were quite popular in the Maxwell family with their business handling skills, as his father managed 5 Wall Street investment funds with high efficiency, making profits in all of his desired investments without a single failure. This guarantee of success caused everyone in the business circle to refer to him as the Spider since his investment senses were that sharp. Meanwhile, his mother managed tens of 5-star hotels and a few 3-star Michelin restaurants worldwide. Their reputation reached a peak in her hands, as every customer or critic who visited or ate in them left only good remarks behind. Unfortunately, they passed away in a helicopter incident when they headed to the family headquarters to surprise Felix on his 11-year birthday. Well, they did manage to surprise him when he heard the news of their death while he was cutting his birthday cake alone in his room. One could only imagine the trauma this event might have caused to young Felix. Since that moment, he changed into a different person. He became shameless, playful, making pranks on his cousins, bullying them daily until they feared his existence. They complained to the adults to punish him. But the elders knew that his playful personality emerged only to hide his pain and fear of loneliness deep within his heart. So they closed one eye and allowed him to bully them to the point they created an anti-Felix alliance, grouping and beating him up whenever he tried to prank one of them. 2 years quickly passed by. Felix matured a tiny bit since then. He stopped harassing his cousins after realizing that it was not worth it to get beaten up just for a prank. He then became lazy and unproductive. His school marks were below average, while his friends were the typical second generation nouveau rich kids who think with their penises and not their brains. If they had one, that is. The years went by until he reached the most important year in his life, which was 16. The reason was that the entire life of every junior within the family depends on the coming-of-age tradition, where needed to pass a test that spans 5 years' duration. This test entailed that one must revive a dead business, such as a company on the verge of bankruptcy, a restaurant with negative reviews, hotels that had a bad reputation from their customers, or just were not performing well in general. Suppose the junior managed to revive his business in a period of 5 years successfully. The family board would reward him with 49% shares of that project. This meant, the bigger the company or hotel you revived, the bigger your reward. 49% of the restaurant shares were not the same as owning 49% in car manufacturer company, but if they failed the test, they would have only 2 options left to choose from. The first one was to live their life freely without family control or resources. In contrast, the second one was to pick any business that fits their talents and manage it with only 10% profit shares. This tradition was the reason why the family kept growing successfully while at the same time keeping their resources at bay, without risks of losing them to outsiders. Meanwhile, Felix could not have cared less about the test or his future. He only chose this resort hotel as his project was to idle away from everyone else. Felix woke up from his reminisce as he chuckled at his younger self tantrum, which caused them to get left behind in bloodline integration. He smirked evilly. Since this daddy is back, my dear cousins, you can forget about getting resources from the family, as I will make this resort hotel the best in the world, where only elites can step on this island. He then laughed out loud with spaghetti legs, wobbling continuously, unable to support his weight after descending those hellish stairs. And I know just how to do so. Supremacy Games. Chapter 4, The 3 Choices. After finally reaching the hotel's ground floor, Felix sat down on a couch near the receptionist's desk while panting like a dog. If walking down the stairs turned me into this, what will happen to me if I climbed? As he imagined that scene, his eyelid twitched after seeing an unpleasant outcome. He soon turned his head to the reception lady who was playing on her phone while chewing gum. Layla, you better rush the maintenance team to fix the elevator as fast as possible. If I returned from my walk and didn't see it fixed, I swear to God I will ride on your back up the stairs. Understood. Layla popped the gum on her face immediately after Felix's abrupt warning. Yes, young master, if you came back and found the elevator not working, don't mention riding me up the stairs. I will allow you to ride me whenever you want. Layla regretted the instant she said the last part, as she was not thinking properly since she always had a crush on Felix. Her feelings were honestly pretty understandable. He might be a lazy brat, but he was also handsome, rich, and even an heir of a business empire. What do I do? He must think I'm an easy girl now, she thought, almost tearing up. Do you think I am that thirsty to force myself on you? He threw his head back and stood up with difficulty from the couch. He then walked towards the wide-open entrance. Focus on fixing the elevator. I will be back in 4 hours. Even when I indirectly offered myself to him, he still didn't make his move. Layla sighed dejectedly as she eyed his back. At least there's still a chance for him to ride on my back up the stairs if the elevator was not fixed, she murmured under her breath with flushed cheeks. Yet before she went too far, she snapped out of her fanaticism when she realized that it was not worth it. After all, she couldn't even climb those stairs by herself. Don't even mention doing it while carrying Felix on her back. Sure, it would feel good for the first couple of minutes, but later on, it was going to be pure misery. Without further ado, Layla used her phone to call the repairman. "Hello, Mr. Cled, can you tell me how much time you will need to repair the elevator?" 8 hours, Miss Layla. If it were someone else, he would need 16 hours minimum. A gruff voice came from the other side of the phone call. Layla felt her heart sink at his answer. "Well, I need it fixed in 4 hours. I don't care what you do to repair it. I need it working. When the young master returns, if you manage to do so successfully, you will be rewarded by young Master Felix himself. And you know that he is quite generous with his tips." Layla felt no shame promising something she had no control over since her life was on the line here. Challenge accepted. "I promise I will fix it within 4 hours. Just speak some good words on my behalf when you meet the young master." Cled replied with an eager voice. Layla sighed in relief and said reassuringly, "Don't worry, young master would not mistreat you." "Thank you, Miss Layla. Goodbye, I need to prepare my tools." "Goodbye." She ended the phone call and started cleaning the gum from her face while holding a small mirror in front of her. Up in the hill, near the beach, Felix could be seen standing at the peak, observing the entire resort hotel with scornful eyes. He had no idea who was stupid enough in the family to invest in this moronic venture. After all, who the hell thought it was a good business idea to have a hotel inside a deserted island in the middle of the Northern Pacific Ocean? Heck, the nearest land was America with a separating distance of 3,000 kilometers between them. Who would pay to travel here, where the only notable thing about this island was the fresh air and clean beaches? Things that could be found in Hawaii or other notable places. The entire island had absolutely nothing unique to grab tourists' attention. Due to that, the entire resort kept rotting for over 15 years since its creation without any family care. NDHTILJIHTHILHIIITHKTHT No wonder why not a single junior chose this place as his revival mission. They knew that it was impossible to achieve it with the pitiful amount of $30 million budget that the family provided as capital. As if that amount was enough to repair the hotel, the airport, the hospital, the seaport, and more fundamental buildings that were not even on the island. The worst part, Felix couldn't even take a loan or ask for assistance from anyone. With all of those disadvantages, the hotel could only be marked as a dead business venture without anyone capable of reviving it. Felix's scornful look was swiftly replaced with an appreciation, as a devious plan had taken root since the moment he saw the hotel's condition. A plan that would turn the impossible into possible if executed properly. He took a pen and a small notebook from his pocket. Then wrote the plan steps unhurriedly. "My plan will kickstart when the Supremacy Games invitation arrives 15 days later." He paused writing and started to dig deep within his memories to find out what had transpired during that period. The date was the 15th of June 2024. 8 p.m. The Earth was revolving around the sun like always, the moon revolved around the Earth as always, and humans lived on the planet arrogantly. They thought they were superior to animals and Earth itself, which fed and housed them. They believed proudly that they were the only intellectual race in the universe since they did not manage to find any life form outside of their solar system. But all of those wishful thoughts were removed from their minds when a voice was heard in every living being's consciousness. No one was spared, from animals, fish, and birds to finally humans. The moment the decree resounded in their minds, the entire planet seemed like it froze. Everyone stopped whatever they were doing, whether sleeping, having sex, driving, posting selfies, or reading. It did not matter as the decree penetrated their consciousness, leaving a voice that said calmly, "Dear primitive Earthlings, we are the scouting and planting crew of the Alexander Kingdom that owns 10 districts, each having hundreds of solar systems. We discovered your planet by chance when our interstellar coordinator device had a small complication. Now that we introduced ourselves properly, let's get down to business. Based on the Supremacy Games Alliance Treaty, Number 12 in the Book of SGA Rules, we are obligated to explain the 3 choices that you currently have. The first choice is to submit to the Alexander Kingdom and swear eternal loyalty to our royal family, thus securing your safety from other invaders. The second choice is to refuse and get invaded and looted by our scouting fleet. Based on the primitive level of your Technology, our AI calculated your chances of victory are 0.0000000000001%. As the only viable way of you having a draw is, by some chance the sun goes supernova, destroying us together. The last remaining choice is to join the Supremacy Game Alliance, which will ensure your survival if you did not break its rules. For more information about the third choice, you can only obtain it in person. You have 7 days to send someone to represent your planet and give us your final decision. You can find our temporary base in the middle of Antarctica. Here are the coordinates: 76.299965 to 148.003021. We await hearing good news from you. The mind transmission will turn off now. The moment the transmission was over, everyone was stunned speechless as multiple emotions messed up their minds: shock, confusion, disbelief, and lastly fear. Bone-chilling fear that sent goosebumps coursing through their spines. They couldn't believe what they just heard, and they didn't want to believe it either. Every human, male, female, old, young, president of a country, or a homeless person under the bridge, in the face of the horrifying fact that their entire race with their so-called advanced technology was seen as primitive by the extraterrestrials, made them realize that they were just frogs in the bottom of a well. Frogs who could only see a small part of the sky through the opening, and not seeing the immensity of it all. The 15th of June 2024, 8 p.m. That day marked the beginning of a long period called the Great Chaos. Supremacy Games. Chapter 5, The Great Chaos. Over 5 million people died in one day because of that transmission. The elderly who had cardio problems died due to heart attacks caused by their blood pressure rising through the roof. The flood of emotions was too much for their fragile heart to handle. Drivers lost control of their vehicles due to a momentary blankness that assaulted them during the transmission and after it. This caused tens of thousands of vehicles to crash into each other on highways and roads worldwide. Planes pilots, who were about to land, failed to do so properly due to the same reason as the drivers. Planes crashed into each other during flight as the air traffic control tower did not notify them to change their paths. Every surgeon who was doing a serious operation made errors that caused the death of their patients. Trains collided, and many more catastrophes. That day the sky rained flames and bodies. Every road on the world was filled with wails of people begging for help, as thousands of corpses laid on the ground unmoving. Airports were crushed by some planes which failed to land properly or ones who did not manage to stop on time as they smashed into the airport buildings. Hospitals were filled with elderly who suddenly died of a heart attack, and patients who died on the operation tables, and much more gruesome deaths. Yet, that was only the beginning of the Great Chaos. What followed after was the true chaos, as 8 billion people were scared shitless when they realized that everyone on the planet heard the same transmission and not just them individually. The sheer power needed to do this kind of action was unfathomable in their minds. The brave ones left their houses to see the chaotic situation that resulted from the decree. Simultaneously, the weak-minded people closed their windows and doors as they read the news on the TV and internet, which was filled with people sharing pictures and videos from the horrors in their countries using the hashtag #chaos. The majority of people believed that the extraterrestrial was not messing around, and they would really invade them if their presidents decided to go to war with them. And so, they started frenzy buying or looting food, water, and other necessities to hoard them as much as possible due to the fear of an unknown future. While the prices of luxury materials hit rock bottom, not even reaching 5% of their original prices. Gold, silver, gems, metals, and all those resources that had no value in the face of survival were thrown in the market like some cheap rocks to be traded for other important resources. Yet no one bothered to buy them or pick them. After all, who would waste space on a piece of metal that only had value in peaceful times? And these times were definitely not peaceful. Meanwhile, the presidents and kings of the world's countries were freaking out even harder than the civilians, since they were used to living in the center of attention and having peak authority in their country, controlling the faith of the population. Yet now everything turned into a huge joke after hearing the decree. They knew they were not prepared for war, since just a small taste of the invaders' power managed to kill 5 million worldwide instantly. So, they could only gather at the United Nations meeting to make a decision. 7 days later, the countries voted to send the UN spokesperson to scout their spaceship and make a decision based on the information he received. Half a day later, The spokesperson left their spaceship with fear and a hint of excitement in his eyes. No one knew except the world leaders what he saw and heard there. The only thing known to everyone was that the spokesperson chose the third choice, joining the Supremacy Games alliance. Felix, who was deep in his thoughts, suddenly woke up from a cold breeze. He realized the sun was about to set. So he closed his journal that was filled with details of his plan and returned to the hotel. The moment he reached there, he saw servants, maids, and bodyguards crowding over a small area and gossiping with hushed voices. He walked to that spot with curiosity on his face. As he reached, he started to wiggle inside the crowd. "Let me through, let me pass through, F***ck who stepped on my leg." When the bodyguards heard Felix's voice, they started to push others to make a path for him to walk through. Soon after, he saw a man wearing a construction outfit with some metal hooks by the waist, lying on the ground with one of his arms bent in the opposite direction while one of his kneecaps was snapped in half. Next to him were one male and one female wearing Dr. White coats. One was pushing a needle inside the bloodstream of the man who was broken like a vase, and the other was checking his broken limbs. Felix had a bad feeling after seeing this scene. He poked Jack, who was next to him, and asked out loud, "Tell me what the hell happened here in my absence. I do not tolerate my people being harmed in any form." Jack replied with a whisper, "Young master, this is Cled, the only repairman on the island. Unfortunately, he had an incident when he was fixing the elevator," he continued while scratching his head in confusion. For some reason, he was rushing to fix it as fast as possible, like he was in a race with someone. Yet, the most amazing thing was that he spent only 3 hours fixing it. But just as he wanted to celebrate, the metal pole he was hanging from broke in half due to rust corroding its interior. Because of that, he fell. He sighed in relief. Thankfully, the elevator roof was near him, so he was badly wounded but not flat out dead. Layla summoned the island hospital doctors to check on his condition. Felix stiffly listened to Jack retelling the events that transpired in his absence. "I see. Fortunately, he did not die. Go inform Layla to take care of his medical bills in my name and make sure to serve him whatever he desired in the hospital." Jack replied with his chest puffed out in pride as he thought that Felix was looking out for his people. "As you wish, young master. It's truly our blessing for being your subordinates." Felix smiled wryly and thought, "I doubt that. If it were not for me forcing Layla to take extreme measures to fulfill my request, he would still be fine." He turned around and walked towards the elevator while frowning his eyebrows. "This is my second lapse of judgment. I'm still not used to the fact that Earthlings' bodies are still fragile and could break with a single mistake." He stared at the elevator for a second and said under his breath, "Don't worry, Mr. Cled, it won't be long before your body returns to its peak form again. Just wait a while, as the invitation is just up the corner. It's time to start adapting to my weak body. Otherwise, I will end up dead from overestimating my own strength sooner or later." He glanced at the elevator one last time and walked towards the stairs. He planned to climb them to reach his suite, which was on the 30th floor. Just as he started to climb with determination on his face, he saw Layla weeping while sitting on a stair. Felix sighed at this sight and sat next to her. He patted her shoulder gently and apologized, "I am sorry for making you go through this. Cled's injuries are completely on me, so don't beat yourself up over it since I will take care of everything soon." Without waiting for her to replay, Felix climbed the staircase. As he climbed further and further away, he heard her say out loud, "Young Master Felix, the elevator is fixed. Why didn't you use it?" "Because I don't deserve it, you guys use it. From now on, I will only use the stairs to atone for my mistake." Meanwhile, his true thoughts were actually to start training his stamina continuously by using them. After all, he couldn't just wait and do nothing simply because he knew that the invitation would arrive 15 days later. It's better to train so his body would be a little bit ready for the hellish pain that awaits him during his awakening with a bloodline. 15 minutes later, Felix dropped on his knees while taking sharp breaths each second after reaching his floor. He tried to call for the servants, but his dry hoarse voice didn't manage to travel far. So, he gave up and laid there on the ground with his chest rising up and down. "Can I really do this each day? It seems impossible with my stamina." He shook his head and tried to stand up. Get a grip, Felix, you were lazy in your previous life and that cost you dearly. It's time to start taking integration seriously. And the first step is conquering those stairs of doom. Afterward, he walked slowly towards his suite while leaning on the wall as a support. A couple of minutes later, he removed his clothes and wore a pajama, then dropped on the bed with eyes closed shut and a relaxed expression. He was truly dead tired.